Hi everybody, welcome to today's FindTheBestCarPrice.com video. Today we're going to take a look at the 2022 Honda Civic Sport. This model comes with an exterior color of Sonic Gray, a black interior, and a sticker price of a really good price, I would say, $24,710. Let's get started with our tour. So let's talk about exactly what you're going to get for that price point of $24,710. Honda Sensing, a whole lot of safety features, all the technical features that are standard on all trim levels. So Honda Sensing has changed a little bit though with this model. Instead of having the radar system right here, you've got a camera-based system now that Honda says will be more accurate and work smoothly compared to what it did in the past. It's going to be located right up here actually. So there are some changes with that. Also, one thing I do want to point out here is if you haven't seen one of these Civics in person, maybe we should park it next to an Accord because there are a couple here available. This does not look like an Accord in any form or fashion, and I do think that bears saying because so many people are saying that the Civic looks all grown up and that it looks like an Accord and all this stuff. No, it looks like a Civic and it looks like a redesigned Civic. I like that. So you're going to find the LED headlights. Notice this blinking light right here. If you don't know how to make that happen when you're changing lanes or turning when you're driving down the road, I'm going to show you how to do that later on in the interior. It's a nifty little trick. One thing that's interesting here, this model doesn't have front fog lights. You might think that it does, but it's kind of deceptive in a way. But right there is where they would be if this model had them, but it doesn't actually. Just kind of an interesting thing, although I have to say I think Honda probably did a pretty good job with that when it comes to kind of concealing that instead of just putting another piece of plastic right there. Going to have 235/40 R18, so there's going to be 18-inch wheels with that tire wrapped around it. And here are your mirrors, of course. On the sport trim level, you're not going to find the turn signal indicator built into the side view mirror. They are power adjustable mirrors, manually foldable, if that's something you're interested in. Answering another question some of you ask a lot of the time, what percentage of window tint is on this Civic? You're going to have 40 on the front windows, 25 on the rear doors, and on the back window is going to be 12. And if you don't know what that actually means, that's the percentage is the percentage of light that the window tint allows into the interior. And a quick look here at your remote. And as you can see, another thing I'm asked about a lot is, does it have remote start? And you can see that it does. Very sturdy remote, very well built, just a simple remote, but it is effective. Let's talk a little bit about cargo space. Of course, you're going to have these LED taillights back here, and you won't be able to say, no one can say that they look like a stapler. That's one thing you won't find on this car, so none of that, you know, that's my imitation of a stapler. Probably going to get nailed in the comments for how bad that was. 14.8 cubic feet available of cargo space, which is a reasonable amount. You're going to have that protective mat right there, of course, that can help to keep the carpet clean underneath there if you want that. And right here, if you want to lower the rear seats, notice there's only one on this side, so Carrie can pan over to the other side and you'll see there's not one on each side as we'll see in some vehicles. And you'll also notice that the seats come down as one solid piece. So this is not a 60-40 split right here. Let me get back in the shot right here. But that's how it works. And there is an advantage to that in that you can put everything up with just one swipe. And one thing that I thought was interesting, by law, there are always going to be some kind of a release inside the trunk in case somebody gets trapped or whatever happens. And usually it's some kind of a little latch that just kind of hangs down or something like that. Here, it's kind of concealed. That's very interesting. So you just kind of do that right there. But I've never seen one like that before, at least never noticed it before. Now, another thing that you won't find as an issue here, I always get some interesting comments on some of my videos. The Honda Insight does not have a spare tire, and that's in the effort to save weight. So it has a tire repair kit. So if you're wondering, what about the Civic? Thankfully, it has a spare tire right here. Very easy to access, all the tools you need there. So as we hop into the back seat here, let's talk a little bit about space. you can see that my head isn't quite touching the roof. It's probably kind of hard to tell with this black interior. I don't know, maybe that helps to tell. But I am sitting straight up. If this car hit enough of a bump, well, I'd probably hit my head pretty fast. But you can see how well I fit in here. Not too terribly bad. Now, one thing you won't find in the back seat of any Honda Civics is going to be air conditioning vents located on the rear of the console. Some people may like that, some people may not, but the funny thing is when, of course, some of the drivers are complaining about that in the comments section, well, you don't ever ride back here. Well, most likely you don't, but small door bin, it'd be easier for Carrie to show you on that side, but there is enough room in there to easily put a large water bottle or whatever it is you may be drinking, and so ultimately there is a reasonable amount of space back here depending on the size of your rear passengers. If you're over 5'10", you probably want to sit in the front, but just so you know, there's the information. And one more thing that also is here, I just noticed that you also have the grab handle right here. So if your driver is driving spiritedly and you're a rear seat passenger, you can hold on to that as kind of an oh crap handle. Let's talk a little bit about what you get under the hood. Now, there are two engine options available. In this case, it's going to be the 2-liter naturally aspirated 4-cylinder. It puts out 158 horsepower, made into a CVT, of course, that continuously variable transmission, front-wheel drive. I know a lot of people would like to see all-wheel drive at some point in the future with the Civic, but are they willing to pay the extra price for that? That's one of those things that's going to happen. If it happens, people are going to complain about the price increase. So, what are the advantages of the lesser horsepower? You've got the 1.5-liter turbocharged model that makes 180 horsepower, but with the 2-liter naturally aspirated, here's the biggest advantage. If you're looking to save gas mileage, here are your numbers. 30 miles per gallon estimated city, 37 out on the highway, 33 combined, and according to Honda, per every 100 miles you drive, you should go through 3 gallons of gas. That's not too bad. I'm gonna have Carrie show y'all something really interesting that we noticed earlier. I haven't noticed this before. If you wanna know about the VIN number on your Honda Civic, hopefully you can do that one-handed. Maybe I can help out with that just a little bit. If you wanna know what the VIN number on your Civic is, that's where it's located. Well, at least one of the places, but I thought that was very interesting. I don't know why, but I think of an old school chalkboard eraser when I see that right there, but that's just what I see. But just so you know, that's what you have. Now, you will have manually adjustable seats for the driver and passenger. I do have to say, I like the design of the seats here. You got a little bit of bolstering, so if the driver wants to drive spiritedly, well, the front seat passenger should stay in place pretty well, and this is not anything unusual for the sport model. You will also find push button start, so as long as you have the remote on your person, it's not going to be a problem. You just hop in the vehicle, hit the button, and off you go. And then, of course, those grab handles that we talked about earlier, going to still have those here in the front. One thing that has definitely changed for 2022, you'll notice a difference with the screen. Not anything new in the industry, but kind of new for Honda, is the fact that the screen is sitting at a higher position now, and it's more of a floating screen. And the idea behind that design is that the driver, if they look at the screen, still has a better view of the road when they're driving down the road. So of course, you're going to find all of the typical features you would expect here. Even though it is the sport trim level, you won't find as much as you might on other trim levels, but you do have Bluetooth, you can pair your phone, you can use all those great features, and you can go in and make a lot of adjustments, as you can see here. If you want to change your language, you can. Rear camera settings, all that kind of stuff. We're not going to go in and do all of that. But speaking of the rear camera, let's take a look at exactly what you have there. So you actually have a multi-view camera, as you can see. So there's your first view, there's your second view, and if you're backing up, say, over here, and you want to make sure you're not going to hit the railing right there, let's see if we can do it, then you can kind of see where you are in reference to the curb before you actually hit anything. And good news for a lot of people, I think, here. A lot of people tell me they don't like the push button shifter. Well, obviously that is not what you have here, the conventional style shifter on the console. If you had wireless charging, that's where it would be located, but you do have your connectivity here between the USB and the 12 volt single zone climate control, but definitely going to do a great job here and more of the changes in the interior. You can see across the dashboard right here, you almost can't tell where the air conditioning vents are just with the way everything is designed. Of course, when you see those adjustments, then you know that's the air conditioning vent, but just so you can kind of see what's there. And then of course the steering wheel right here, we're going to have our typical steering wheel mounted controls. Going to have all those great safety features such as adaptive cruise control, lane keeping assist, road departure mitigation, all that good stuff that comes with Honda sensing. Shifter paddles right here on the shifter if you want to drive spiritedly, of course. And here's something that I mentioned earlier. How do you make those lights flash on the front end when you're changing lanes or turning? That's exactly what that lever on the left-hand side of the steering wheel is for. And see that blinking arrow up there, blinking to the right? That means you're changing lanes to the right or turning to the right. Same thing to the left right there. I know that a lot of you can't afford that option on your vehicles, at least not around the Shreveport-Bossier area. So obviously you may have never had that experience before. Maybe one day you'll be able to step up to a car and you can afford that option if it's offered on the trim level that you buy. But just so you know, that's the turn signal lever. And other than that, really, that's basically what we have here. A very well-built car for a really solid price, but that does leave one more thing that we need to do, and that's the test drive. All right, guys, here we go out on the test drive. Something I really enjoy with these 11th generation Civics, because they're the best handling that I've personally ever experienced. And that is due to the fact that Honda has updated the chassis and updated the suspension, and the way everything is tuned just makes such a difference as to how these Civics handle. I mean, they just seem to suck themselves down to the road. That's the only way I can put it. I don't know what else to say. I'm impressed. As somebody with a racing background, my drag racing background gives me the opportunity to be able to feel what a vehicle is doing beyond what, well, probably the average person can. So to say I'm impressed with the handling of this Civic is really an important point. And while you may not notice that the same way that I do, depending on your driving background, you definitely would notice the difference when it comes to how comfortable you are with the way a vehicle drives when it comes to just driving down the road, depending on your experience. Now, I know it's not a lot of horsepower, but it'll still get down the road just fine. We're getting up to speed here, no worries. Of course, the CVT, I know, gets a lot of mixed reactions from people. Some like it, some absolutely hate it. Tell me down in the comments where you fall and tell me why. But I will say this. Out of all of the different vehicles I've driven in 3 full years now of making these videos on YouTube, I must say that the CVT in these Civics just seems to be the most well-behaved, continuously variable transmission that I've had any experience with. So what about the overall experience of just ride quality? Well, it's not going to be a Cadillac, but it's also not going to beat you to death. So depending on what you're used to driving, I was going to determine what you think about how the Civic rides and handles. Now, why do I say it that way? Well, one thing you have to take into consideration is the fact that people who make these car review videos on YouTube, you got to take something into consideration. What is their daily driver? So what are they used to experiencing? Are they used to a Cadillac, for example, something that's just silky smooth, kind of what I would call a marshmallow car, maybe, something along those lines that's just so smooth you don't feel any bumps no matter what. It's kind of like riding on a cloud. Or do they drive around in something that rides like a lumber wagon, as I've heard it put, that just has practically no shocks, no suspension? If you have fillings in your teeth, well, you won't after the experience. So you have to take those things into consideration. The ultimate conclusion is you probably just need to drive it for yourself, because that is one thing about these videos here on YouTube, is the fact that it's really hard to put into words and to a true place of understanding what it's like to drive these vehicles. We try and verbalize that as best as possible, but I just think it's better to experience it. For me personally, I have to say that the ride quality is good. It's not subpar, it's not uncomfortable. I could live with it. So, not bad. Everything's easy to use. I say this a lot, but it's so important to repeat this because I don't know who's watching these videos, but if you've never had the technology that's available in these vehicles, don't be afraid of it. It's not hard to learn, it's not hard to use. Once you get used to it, you're going to say, wow, how did we live without this? And Honda has the easiest, in my opinion, easiest infotainment system in the industry to use. And so if you're looking to step into a 22 Civic, I think you're going to be very pleased with everything, no matter what the case may be. The sport trim level, of course, isn't going to have a lot of the higher end features that you can get on other models, but for the price point, I really believe that you get really more than what you're paying for.
To learn more about the model in today's video, visit the link in the description for a detailed comparison between trims and pricing for the vehicle we featured or any vehicle you may be interested in. These pages feature information such as our recommended trim level based on price, value, and features. Thank you for taking the time to watch today's video. We look forward to seeing you next time.